Hello and good evening to everyone who have tuned into our channel. I'm Snehal Patil, the management lead at GDSC SITS. We are here with another amazing session before Snow Hacks. So let me tell you what Snow Hack is. It is a 3-day hackathon organized by GDSC SITS. Okay, so the speaker for today is Santosh Yadav. He is a Google developer expert of Angular and is also a GitHub star. He has a 12 plus years experience in programming and application development and is also a very highly versatile individual. So, folks, are you interested in knowing what is open source? Today, we have Santosh who will be telling us about his own experience as to how open source changed his life. Also, he will be telling us how we can improve our skills and network with people with the help of open source. So, without any further ado, let's get started.
Thank you, Sneha, for the amazing introduction, and thanks everyone for joining today. And so I will be telling you two stories actually how open source changed a life, and of course it will contain the part where we'll also learn how you can actually contribute to open source. So before I move ahead, let me just introduce again myself. So as Nehal said, I'm a GD for Angular and GitHub star from India, and I'm an Auth0 ambassador, and I'm also founder of an publication, or we can say an open source learning initiative, which we call as This is Learning. So there is a Twitter handle called This is Learning on Twitter. You can go ahead and see and follow what we are doing. So we actually onboard a lot of writers who can share the blogs, and in case you are interested to do live streams or help us doing live streams by probably creating banners or some assets for us, that will be also beneficial, and you can also let us know if you're interested to help the community grow. So that's about me, and in case you want to get in touch with me after the session is over, you can go to Twitter. My Twitter handle is Santosh Yadav Dev, and you can find with similar handle on LinkedIn as well as GitHub as well. So in case you have some questions, feel free to DM me on Twitter. So let's go ahead and get started. So as I said, I'll be telling you two stories how open source changed the life, and how you can also do that. And so let's see. So the first thing is, if you give 10% to the community, you get 10x in return. And I'm not lying. I've actually seen this, and I have actually received so much from the community by just giving small time from my own life, and I got so many things from the community back. Let's start with the stories. So the first story is about a guy. He worked in a startup in Mumbai for 5 years, and he was really comfortable doing all those stuff. I mean, he was it was a startup. There were a lot of issues, a lot of problems to resolve, and he really like jumped into everything and then saw a lot of issues. He got like good raise every year, year by year, and internally he thought, okay, he knows too much. He knows so much that okay, he is one of the best developers I think out there, and probably once he tries to, or once he leaves the organization, he will be like will get a good job. But that's what he thought. Like he thought it's successful. So after 5 years working for a startup, he said now it's time to move on. And he realized that that was not the reality. So he used to think that okay, now I know whatever I knew was more than enough in a tech, but he was lagging behind. He was not like up to the date or up to the market conditions. So he got rejected from a lot of organizations. I mean, getting rejected from a lot of interviews, and of course he was a little bit disappointed, right? So if once you gave 5 years working somewhere, and then you think okay, you have done so many amazing things, and then you are not getting accepted anywhere, of course you will be a little bit disappointed. So what were the learnings from those rejections? So he realized that okay, he was actually working for an organization, he was not working himself. Whatever he did, he always kept in mind that okay, I want to solve the problem for this particular organization, but he never thought how he will improve his own knowledge. That was never his in mind. So he never tried to improve his skills. So he said, okay, this is the stack which I have to use, and I will just keep doing the same stuff. He never tried to improve the skills or do anything else apart from his work, even not getting involved in the community. So uh, that's next point, right? So he was disappointed, but finally he got a job and he moved on. Now let's see the second story. So second story is about another guy who started a startup. So he started his own startup, and he was really disappointed because his startup didn't work. He tried to get involved in even he tried to write the code. He was not a actually tech guy, but he said, if I have to survive this game, I have to do this as well. So he started learning the coding as well, but unfortunately his startup never survived. So he lived in Ukraine and uh, worked hard, but actually he was not able to get a good job, not good paying job actually. So what he did, so he was disappointed with his career, and he said, okay, it's not going anywhere. And he thought of, like, after 3 years of like giving his time for startups where he learned to code as well, he said, now it's enough. Let's move on. He said, let's quit the tech and let's move on. I don't want to do or don't want to play this game anymore. And he said, now I cannot do this anymore. But around 2016, there was a framework called Angular which got released. He said, how about giving a last chance? How about giving a last chance to my career and getting involved into this particular framework? So he went into onto the Stack Overflow. So he actually got involved and started answering all those questions on Stack Overflow. So how he did that? He went to the GitHub repository. He started reading the Angular code base. He started reading up everything. Okay, how those concepts work inside the Angular, and that's how he was able to answer those questions on Stack Overflow. He was one of the early adopters, or you can say the early developer who started answering questions related to Angular on Stack Overflow. So he decided, now my answers on Stack Overflow is actually really famous. So he was one of the top contributors in the Angular. So he said, why not to convert those answers into blog post? So he started writing blogs. What he did is, the time he invested like learning the code base, the actual Angular code base, he converted them to blogs. And whenever he used to actually answer something on Stack Overflow, he used to actually give the link to his blog. But this was the response on his first blog post: 114 views in 30 days. He was disappointed, but he said, no, this time I don't want to fail. And I will succeed this time. So he said, okay, it's okay. 114 views doesn't matter. Someone got something out of this answers. That's what matters. He was ready to give his time to the community. So he said, okay, I don't want to quit this time. I will survive here. So he said, okay, what he did is, now writing blogs, he said, okay, let me just start my own publication. So he's decided to start his own publication on Medium. So Medium was a really good publication at that time. Now they screwed up. That's a different story. But so they said he started a different separate publication for Angular. And then what he did is, he decided to invite other developers or other experts related to Angular to his publication. So they were by that time they were like really good friends of his. So he said, okay, we'll write blog posts, because of course it will give them a platform as well, right? So it's a collaboration always. So they joined the publication, and that's how it kicked off. And within first year, you can see they got like more than 300k, yeah, 300k views within a year. So remember, first month only 114 views, and then rest of month like, it reached 300k views within a year. So he said, okay, now what else? So later he was recognized as Microsoft Valued Professional MVP, as well as he became a Google developer expert for Angular. So that's his story. And then in 2018, he actually gave a talk at one of the biggest Angular conference, which happens every year in USA, which is known as NGConf. But one thing still, I mean, he was really not earning well. What about money? So he got hired by AG after like looking at all those contributions which he had made. AG reached out to him and they hired him to work as a developer advocate for them. Now, who is this guy? So he founded Angular in depth, and now it's named as indepth.dev. He is Stack Overflow top 0.17% contributor. He used to work for Narwhal, no, not now, but he has like more than 1 million views on indepth.dev. And he's also winner of Ukrainian IT Awards in 2019. So his name is Max Koretsky, and he's on Twitter. You can just go to indepth.dev and you will get to know more about him. And this is how he survived like entire thing from starting his own startup, almost ready to quit, almost ready to give up, and then he realized that okay, no, there open source still has potential. So he got involved into the open source, he got involved with the Angular, and then this is how he reached at this stage right now, that where he can actually support a lot of developers. He has been doing a lot of good things with indepth.dev. There are a lot of writers who is writing for indepth.dev. You can also reach out to him in case you want to write or publish your blogs. Indepth.dev has a lot of in-depth contents. So even like if you are learning Angular and you want to gain what you can say in-depth knowledge, more knowledge about Angular, it has blogs about that. If you want to learn React in depth, they have content about that as well. So a lot of great contents which is there for on indepth.dev, and you can reach out to him Twitter. I think he'll be happy to help you as well. But what about the second developer? So let's talk about him, what he did. So finally he realized that okay, whatever he did with his life or whatever he did with his career is something he has to change. He has to change the way he was working, and he started contributing finally to open source in 2019. So he realized okay, he lost a lot of time, but I still have a lot of time to do, right? I mean, it's up to you. It's people say it's never what you can say, late to start, and that's what he realized. So within 6 months, when after started contributing, he like moved on to top 100 contributor for Angular, and he was top 10 contributor for NGRX. So he was like really putting his time into open source. He joined the in-depth.dev as a writer, and within a year he wrote like around more than 8 blog posts. Within here, his own blog post reached more than 250K views in first year we started writing. Then he also spoke at first ever Angular conference, which happened in Sri Lanka. Good old days when conference used to be physical, not virtual. So he spoke at that particular conference about NGRX. Then he became GD for Angular, and next year in 2020 he became GitHub star as well. And then what he did to do that, so he started creating and managing open source projects. So he actually got involved into the open source by contributing to the other projects like Angular and grx and a lot of other projects which he contributed to. And then he said okay, now it's okay to contribute to open source project, but he had like idea of his own. So he said okay, now let's create something which can be beneficial for others as well, right? So he created his first project and said okay, now this is something which I can use, so probably I should publish it. So he decided to put it on the npm, and that really took off. So Angular team decided to take that project and add it into the Angular documentation is still there. And that's how he got recognized. Okay, he has been doing something in the community. I mean, so also he moved to Germany this year 2022. And but how? So what about the job search after moving into the open source? So this time he actually he had to not look for a job. He was actually approached for a job by just networking and community. So community already knew what the work he was doing, putting on, or the kind of uh, things he has been doing, or kind of contents he has been creating. So it was easy to get a job. Not easy, but yeah, I mean, due to the network, I mean, he easily got a job. It was not the same as previous time where he had to struggle a lot and got rejected in a lot of interviews. So not like that. So what we have learned so far, let's see. So both the developers, they realize that okay, it's not worth working for ourselves or working for an organization. So they started like working towards community. They realized, okay, this is something I think we have done enough now for ourselves, and now let's try to give back to the community and see how it pays. So they started doing that. But while helping others, they realized that they are also improving their own skill. So they started learning more. They started learning more concepts, and they started creating projects. They started creating open source, of course, diving deep into the issues, diving deep into the concepts. Writing blog actually helped them to improve their knowledge, because once you write blog posts on the in-depth content, you actually go through all the content, all the materials which are available on the internet, right? So you do research. You actually do research to actually write your blog, and that's what they started doing. So they said, okay, now if I'm writing one blog post on a particular topic, I'll do my own research and I will see what are the different contents which are available. They went to the GitHub repository, read the code, see how it works, and then uh, the only thing was to explain it better in a they write it. So helping the community made them stand out. So they realized that, okay, while helping the community, they are also one of the community member who is getting recognized for the efforts they are putting in. Of course, that was not the uh, what you can say. That was not the agenda of doing it. They just wanted to survive. Both the developers, they just wanted to survive. That, okay, we have done enough now. Let's try to put this or put our effort here and see how it pays off. And they got recognized. They community realized that, okay, they are putting a lot of efforts. So that's how they become GD, they become GitHub stars, right? But how to get involved? So this is the part where you will learn that, okay, how to get involved with the open source or how to get involved with the community. So let's see. Stack Overflow, not my favorite. I never do Stack Overflow, but the story of Max, right, which you saw, he started doing more on Stack Overflow. A lot of developers still do that, and they are helping a lot of other developers. I have seen answers or developers reaching out to million developers, helping them out because they just answered something. And I'm sure most of you listening out here have some skills with you which can help other developers. Remember, technology improves, right? I mean, if is it's not mandatory, the answer which was answered in 2010 is still valid. So all the languages, JavaScript, .NET, Java, or TypeScript, they are improving. They are like adding a lot of features year by year or month by month. So it's not like one question which was answered in 2010 still valid. You can actually go through all the questions and see if you can answer it in a better way, or if something is already answered, you can see, okay, if it is correct or not, right? So this is how you can start getting involved with Stack Overflow. If you don't find questions, this is also what you can do. You can put question which you think is was beneficial for you, and then you can answer it yourself. It depends upon the moderators. Believe me, they are really toxic, but probably may work for you. They started writing blog posts, so they realized that, okay, now uh, to share this knowledge, what we can do is we can deep dive into what we are really trying to do. And they started writing blog posts around the same. It does not need to be that particular that in depth, right? I mean, in case you think, okay, I've just started learning something and what should I do, I won't be able to write the in-depth content, but of course I have something to share, and everyone has something to share. I mean, how you learn that thing, start from there. So let's say you started with JavaScript and then you learn about Clojure. Write it in your own way, that, okay, this is what Clojure means, this is how what are the use cases are. I'm sure most of the developers are using TypeScript now, and Clojures. I'm not sure how many people are actually using Clojures right now, but yeah, I mean, now you have classes which you can also use and avoid Clojure. But yeah, in case you learn something new, right, in any language, any technology, if you learn something new, try to write it down. And believe me, don't write it for others. Write it for yourself, because we are human beings. You cannot save that much information in your brain. Believe me, 2 years ago, the blog post I wrote, probably I don't know what was the thought process behind that. It helps me, but so sometimes I find my own answer in my blog post, because of course I cannot actually save all this information, right? It is same for everyone. everyone until and unless you are a robot, right? So you have all this information in your brain. But as a human, of course, it is really hard to do that. So write for your own self that, okay, if I see this blog 2 years later, and if I have to understand this concept, I should be able to explain it to myself. Just keep that in mind and write. You can also contribute to open source. So what I mean, there are multiple ways. So you can go to the repositories and see if there are any issues, which is something which you can do and which you can solve. Now the question is where to start, and a lot of developers actually just keep figuring out, okay, where to start, where should I start contributing to open source. If you're a working professional, or even if you're a student, I'm sure you keep exploring a lot of stacks. You keep exploring a lot of different libraries. Most of the libraries or tech stacks or languages are open source nowadays. How you can do that? So you can just pick up any library. So let's say you picked up some library in React, and then you are using that library. I'm not talking about React specifically, but let's say some UI library related to React, or some logging library, or something to do some operation, right? And then you realize that, okay, this particular library, I'm using it from long time, but I think it has some limitation. Or just keep and watch in that particular repository and see if it gets some new issues, if it gets new bugs, and see if you can resolve it. Believe me, if you may find on Twitter that like thousands of developers are talking about open source, many of them are not contributing to open source. They are just talking about it. They don't actually put their own time to contribute a lot into open source. There are some developers who are doing it full time, and there are some developers who has been like backed by their own employer, so they can contribute to open source, right? But not everyone. So if you see 1,000, probably 10% are currently active. Those 1,000 contributed, but right now at current point of time, probably you'll find only 10% of developers are actively contributing to open source. So if you think it's a big number, it's not. Even if you go to the React repository or any other repository where you will find, okay, this particular repository has, let's say, 4,000 contributors. But if you go to the commits, you will find only 4 or 5 developers are actually contributing repeatedly. Out of 4,000, probably 3 to 4, around 3,000 might have like raised 10 commits, and then they are gone. And you will not find them again contributing to that code base. So of course you have a lot of work to do in case you want to get involved with any open source project. Just start somewhere, right? So start observing that repository, start writing code base, start exploring that particular library or framework, whichever you want to. Start reading more about it, so you come to know about the internals in case you want to contribute to the code base. Easiest ways to start is start learning. What you do whenever you want to learn something, what you do, probably you go to the documentation. Go to documentation, see if you follow that documentation, everything works or not. And if it works, good. If it doesn't work, go ahead and help them improve the documentation. Or if you think the documentation can be written in a better way, probably it's more complicated to understand right now, go ahead and change it. Right? Suggest them, okay, this is something I didn't understood, but if we write this particular thing in this way, we can. If you are not into like writing much code and you like to write tests, go ahead and learn testing and come back to the project and help them write test cases, right? Because a lot of libraries still doesn't have like 100% code coverage, because of course they cannot put that much time, like their own time, into the doing everything. So write the test cases for them. Can be anything. If you want to learn Cypress, just go ahead and learn Cypress and then migrate some project to Cypress and suggest them, okay, I migrated this project from whatever ABC E2E library you had to Cypress, and it works faster, or it has like it is able to catch more errors. So do those things. This is how you will get more involved into the open source projects. Only thing, be respectful. Don't try to what you can say, budge the maintainers every time. See if they are available and then interact with them. Start meetups. So that's also one of good ways to actually contribute to the community. You can start your own meetup. I mean, we are here because someone decided to actually create this particular group, right? Or create this particular community. So meetup is one way, but of course now in a virtual world, it's anywhere possible. You can just go ahead and create some virtual organization like this, and we can all connect. We can all connect and come and share our knowledge. As a student, of course, I'm sure most of you are already involved in DSC, Developer Student Club. If you're not, just become part of one. GDGs are also good way to become part of the community. So explore any GDG around your city and see if they need some help. You have Microsoft Student Partner as well. I'm sure most of you might have applied. And then GitHub Campus Expert is also one program which is really great. So apply to all those programs, see how they can help you. Of course, they expect something from you as well. They expect that you would be willing to learn and you will be willing to give back to the community. That's why they have all these programs. And create contents on YouTube, right? So right now, of course, whatever thing I'm talking to you, it's getting recorded and it will be available on YouTube. You can create your own content. You don't have to be expert to create contents. You can just start with basics, right? And see how it works for you. If you're really into it, if you don't enjoy creating YouTube contents, it's absolutely fine. There are a lot of videos or a lot of content creators already out there, uh, and you can also you can do that too as well. So let's go to the summary. So start working with the community, get involved early as much as possible. Write blog post. It helps improve your knowledge as well as you share your knowledge with the community. Create online content. It will also help you to create your online presence. So you can create blogs, videos, and you can reach a wide audience, right? So in days of a pandemic, of course, we are at home, and uh, at home, of course, we need to improve our skills, and people need content. So create that content. It's and most important thing, it's okay to fail. I mean, it's not like you will always succeed, right? So when the person was working for a startup, he thought he's successful, but he at the end, when he started giving interviews, he realized that okay, it was a failure which he did. Same with Max. He worked for a startup for 3 years, and then he said, okay, now the startup is not working, so I have to close it down. So they realized that they failed, but they never gave up. So because sometimes failure gives us most important lesson in life, and that what they took from that those failures, and they started improving their self. And what happened to the story from Devon? I'm sure you might have realized that I was talking about myself, but just wanted to keep it a secret. So yep, that the developer from story one is me. And that's it. Thank you. And in case you have any question, as I said, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you want to. Okay, so Amay has question: how can a beginner who doesn't know any tech should start with? Like, should he learn first and then contribute? Yeah. So, good question, Amay, because of course this is really important to understand. So, Amay, you are still starting with something, right? So, I would say take your time to learn things. I mean, like, go ahead and explore the technologies which is out there. So, and I hope you are still a student, so you have a lot of time. I'm not sure why students have this fear of missing out it at this stage. Believe me, I started contributing to after like 10 years, and I never had FOMO. I was like, okay, I'm doing something at least finally. And you are still a student. You have a lot of time to explore things. So I would say just go ahead and try. So let's say you decide, okay, now this year I want to actually give 6 months to Python. So learn Python, see if it is something for you. If you think, okay, no, I don't like Python, I want to move on, just go ahead and explore some other technology. Believe me, one thing which will remain common, learning every technology, will be the concepts. So once you know that concept, if you invested like your 6 months learning Python or learning Java, you will in 6 months you will be only learning concepts. Because to understand a language, it will take years, right? Someone created C, he still doing C, right? I mean, he is writing C for 25 years. He is still improving it. And if you think in 6 months you can master everything, then I think that particular person who created C or C++, think about them. What are they? Right? They are still giving 20, 25 years to a same language which they created, and then still they are trying to improve it. So don't think that okay, gave 6 months, I will not get anything out of it. You will learn the basics, and that will be with you for your lifetime. And whichever technology, whichever language you choose after that, it will become easier and easier. Programming is hard. If someone says that programming is easy, I'm sure he's lying to you. Okay, so don't take in that way. Learn something, then see if you want to get into that particular language or get into that particular framework, whatever you decide to use, and then see the opportunities to contribute to open source. Don't jump on day one to contribute to open source. That should not be the goal. The goal is to first learn and improve yourself. After that, you have your entire life to go ahead and contribute to open source. Paishi has what tip you will give for a beginner learning JavaScript and moving to onto frameworks, and I want to learn Angular. Oh, nice. So Paishi, I mean, there's a big community on Twitter. You can of course, I'm sure you are already on Twitter. You can just or you can join us. As I said, we have our own community called This Is Learning, and there is a part of that community which is called This Is Angular. You can join us. I mean, probably in case you are looking forward to, uh, let's say, write blog post or you want to create contents, we can help you with those, and that's how you will start. And to learn Angular, I would suggest go with the documentation first. See how much you can get out of it, because of course Angular has some advanced concepts you cannot learn from documentation, but always start with basic first, right? If you understand the concept, you will be able to realize that what you are missing. But if you don't understand the concept, you will never realize what you're missing. You will be like, okay, I know everything. That's what I did for like initial career of mine. I know everything, but of course, I never decided to go deep into anything, right? So do that. I mean, in case you get into any trouble, just send me a DM on Twitter. I would love to. I'll try to help you as much as possible. And you can also, as I said, if you want to join our community, you can just DM me as well, and we'll onboard you. Okay, what things you do to maintain learning consistency, and what steps can be taken to improve our productivity? So what I do is I get out of comfort zone. So I always think that okay, I don't know anything. I always try to learn something new, or always try to uh, get into like whatever new things which is going on, because of course Angular, of course it's a framework, but it has like a lot of things which is there are multiple releases, there are multiple features which they add, there are multiple things they deprecate, so I have to be aware of everything, right? So it's not like what I learned like 4 years ago is still valid. So I try to challenge myself that okay, I have to be aware of each and everything, and then every morning I wake up, I try to be like okay, I have to learn this, I have to learn that, and just getting out of comfort zone will help you. So don't be in comfort zone. A lot of developers think that okay, whatever they have learned like 5 years ago still valid. It's not. Uh, get out of the comfort zone and learn something new. Okay, what will you like to address to beginners who think that we can just contribute through coding? It's okay. I mean, look, everyone has decided something for you. So one thing which I always believe in is don't let anyone else decide for you. Even though I'm talking here, I'm giving you all this gyan. Don't follow me, right? I always believe that you can create your own path. Decide for yourself. You are still, as I mentioned, you are still student. You have a lot of time to explore things. Go ahead and explore everything and see what works best for you. Open source is not about just writing code. And believe me, if you are doing some DSA and solving problems, that's not open source. Okay, that's not totally open source. And if you are creating your own portfolio, probably you will learn something, but even that is not open source. Open source is something which you create and can be utilized by millions of developers across the world, and you are helping someone by creating, or I'm not sure, by solving some DSA, you are probably helping yourself and few other developers, but that's not an open source, right? So if you really want to write or help projects, so I know few open source developers who has been really doing it. They don't they're not that much into DSA, but they have like put their career like contributing to web. Webpack, ESLint. I mean, I know Nitin is one of them, so who has been consistently contributing to Webpack and ESLint, and he is one of the maintainer as well now, who recently joined Razorpay, I think. And another developer I knew was James, who created a lot of open source projects by himself, and he was also part of Webpack as well. And now he is working for some open source organization which is like more into tooling. So yep, I can give you those two stories that they started contributing to code base, but I'm sure it also took them some time to read and go through everything, and then they started doing it. It's not like day one, okay, I know everything, and let's start contributing to open source. No one does that. On, I mean, even the project, the developers who created those projects, right? It took them time to think about it. They were working in industry for years, and then they said, okay, I want to solve this particular issue, and that's how it started for them. I mean, if you think that you can do it on day one, I don't have any any issue with that. But yeah, it just choose your own path. How can a person having technical writing knowledge get involved in open source? That's a good question. So there are a lot of opportunities creating. So there is something called content writers. Every open source is there are a lot of open source projects, right? And most of them are not good at promoting themselves. Believe me, some of developers are really bad at promoting themselves, including me. What you can do, so in case you are good at writing, go ahead and write about that project, right? So you can just go ahead and deep dive into that project and particular feature or particular section of that particular project which you are trying to explain to other developers, and write about it, and tell the world that okay, this project exists and these are some amazing stuff you can do with this particular project. Reach out to and I'm sure if you start writing more about this particular project, even maintainers will be more than happy to assist you in case you are writing your own next blog post. I have been approached by some of the open source contributors saying, okay, I'll be more than happy to actually review your next blog. And they actually do. So I have sent my own blog to actually get it reviewed from other open source developers, and they really appreciate that I'm putting my own time talking about the project which they have been driving from the years. So yep, that's how you can actually get involved being a technical writer. This is a good question. So, believe me, I've been contributing to Angular, but I don't know everything. So, initially, I started with Angular framework. Then I said, okay, now it's too big to understand everything. So, I mostly focus on Angular CLI, which is a CLI command line utility, and same applies for everyone. So, in case you are like contributing to a like big code base like React or Angular, choose one area which you want to concentrate on, because even if I go to Angular has like it has its own HTTP libraries, it has forms, it has routing. So choose one area where you want to concentrate more on contributing, because even the developers who are working in Angular team, they don't know everything. So some, for example, some developers are really good or mostly involved with Angular CLI, so they're just doing Angular CLI, they are not touching the other part. So there are developers who are working on more on, let's say, forms, and they are just doing the forms and they are not getting involved with others. So choose your interest, okay, and see if you want to get involved there. And of course, it takes a lot of time to read the code base, so choose wisely.
Okay, so we are done with the questions. Wow, Santosh, indeed a very amazing session. And I'm sure all the students will benefit a lot from this. All your great insights from your personal experience. That was really, really amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.